do have 5 minutes, so if we can, let's answer them. But I want everybody to know we do only have 5 minutes.
An answer that will go on for 45 minutes. One thing I will say is that, budget-wise, solar is looking fantastic right now. So that's sort of separate from the specific question. But there have been serious challenges in just sort of what Congress has been appropriating for work on solar projects in the recent past. And their budget this year looks phenomenal. So, I think that's a good start. Solar is just a challenge because it has progressed slower. And when taxpayers, and not just taxpayers, but taxpayers through their congressional representatives, want results on what has happened, what have you done for me lately, solar loses a lot. Because natural gas has done a lot for us lately, and wind phenomenally has done a lot for us lately, and geothermal is doing a lot for us lately, and we can show huge numbers, and we're still playing around with solar efficiencies, 35%, maybe we can get in the laboratory 45%. So it just continues to be a challenge. It doesn't mean that anyone, of course, at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, which started out as the Solar Energy Research Institute, thinks any less of it. I think we all think it is an absolutely fantastic opportunity. We just haven't quite had the research money to really push that science where it needs to be. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. I think it's very important. We would like to see huge budget increases on research for this. I think there is a decent amount of stimulus money that will go to grants for the private sector to do some research. And we're hoping that we can get a little bit of money to do some research. And we're really trying to find niche markets to deploy those into, because when we get asked the question 4 years from now, if there's a new administration, what have you done for me lately? We have to be able to show that we have deployed this and we are using this on large scales, even if it's only 35% efficient. So it's sort of a combination of both.
If I can follow up real quickly on that before we get too far.
Okay.
I understand that it's just a focus. I didn't really mean it to go there, per se. There are two other tangential benefits to what I've seen with the solar car racing community. One of them is, when it was happening in the U.S. on a regular basis, we were creating incredibly talented graduates. I'm one of them. I knew nothing until I got on the solar car scene at Arizona State University. I'm an expert now in my particular field, and people are basically standing in line for what I do. So that benefit we're losing when we don't support that kind of activity, not exclusively solar. What I meant was we need to expand it out to a lot of different things so that we can try all these new ideas. And the other thing that's pretty difficult to categorize and to quantify, because people ask me for what have you done for me lately, is guess what? Guess who's getting better at all this than we are? Other countries, not us. We invented the technology, and we're losing out big time because we basically just said, we're not getting immediate benefit from it. So those are some of the things that I think we've lost with respect to that kind of racing in particular. It's created an enormous talent pool and benefit keeping it in the U.S., if not North America.
We have time for one more question, and this gentleman has been waiting
so
patiently. Go right ahead.
I have a question. I have a comment and a question. Comment for Todd. You look a lot younger in person.
Aging well. Being down with the sun from Michigan's done wonders for me.
You ought to solve a race car race. And a question for Ron. I'm curious, what is the benefit ratio between the energy used in carbon emissions to grow the corn, harvest the corn, create the ethanol, versus the carbon saved and energy saved by using it mixed with gasoline?
Two. I was told there would be no math.
And I'd like to talk to you afterwards, because I do have some things that I can tell you, some websites to go to show you.
One of the things that happens, and
in ethanol, or that has happened over the years, was this debate about energy efficiency. It's always been separate of that, so that's a good question. It's always been how much energy do we produce versus how much do we take to grow that, to make that. And an ethanol plant, I'll give you this one short answer that I like to give, is that to take corn and make it into motor fuel takes about less than 30,000 BTUs of energy, and ethanol as a pure motor fuel has about 76,000 BTUs of energy. So that process is efficient, getting more efficient, mainly because it has to be able to compete with other ones. Most of the illustrations, the analyses of how efficient ethanol is, also then go all the way back to the farm and planting the corn. The recent ones by DOE have been improving. I think they're up to 1.8, positive balance of 1.8. A lot of that is because of better yields per acre in corn. They use less fuel than they used to. Farmers use less fuel, they use less fertilizer, and they are getting more yield per acre. So that's helped our energy efficiency. Some of the negative ones that are out there, David Pimentel's been doing one now for 30 years from Cornell University. He was right when he started. We weren't very efficient. We used a lot of what was in his studies and did that, but he insists on making sure that he still has a negative number every year. It's gotten down lower, so I think his number is 1.2 something negative, which is still better than gasoline, by the way. But he also includes like the calories in the food the farmer eats and the fuel that it took to deliver the tractor to the farm, and basically repairing it every year to a pretty large extent. So you got to look at which science you're looking at. But ethanol, taking corn and making it into ethanol is very efficient. Farming's getting more efficient, so it's become a lot more efficient process. I don't know the answer to that. For the reduction you get, what's the term? That's an interesting question. Maybe somebody else knows. I don't, but it'd be a good analysis.
But I do have some websites I can give you. You can link to that. And Margaret, do you have any?
I don't know the answer, but I'm sure that we have several of those studies that discuss it, because we've analyzed that a lot from a lot of different angles. So I'm sure it's on our website on the AFTC.
That's the website. Oh, you have?
It's one of those things, and I don't know if everybody gets his final comment, but it's one thing that I think you can hear from everybody's answers is transitioning transportation is very, very complex. It's part of the reason why Clean Cities was formed. It's why we have local champions at the local level, because you don't just have housing developers who put solar roofs on a building. Not that that's all that simple either. However, much more simple than having to have 300 million consumers across the United States make the right choice at the dealership, and 180,000 retail gasoline station owners offering the right fuel choices, and 800,000 repair shops across the country capable of making the right repairs, and parts producers producing the right parts for all these different choices, and on and on and on, and having the right tax structure to compete with an industry that's an entrenched industry, and doing that all and making all those things happen, and coordinating all those pieces together is just a very, very, very complex proposition. And so, the one message I would just leave is that having a local champion like Colleen in your community is a great start. And transportation is one of the areas where I would say every individual makes a difference, because every individual has to act in transportation to be able to make the transition happen. Every individual homeowner doesn't necessarily have to make the transition to make something happen in their homes. But we have to reach 300 million people in the United States to make the transition happen in transportation. So your decision does contribute and count towards that whole transition.
Great. All right. I think we're done. And I want to thank actually all of our speakers, because, it was great to have them here. So let's give them a